It's so weird to push back against something that you want and is there. This is what people want, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's what they're trying to get. It's what they're lamenting is not. And it is. And you say all this wonderful stuff is true. It's true, it's yours, you can have it. And they say, I want that, but I don't have it. And you say, but you do. It is yours. It's yours for the taking. And they go, no, it's not.
Look, God is a father. He's a real father. He is the ultimate father.
Yeah.
And if you can just imagine what the ultimate loving, joyful, fun father could be, it's God. If we're going to be able to understand him, we can't figure him out. We just need to simply go to God and say, what is real? Abba, what is real to you?
Right.
Because what is real to you, according to what the Bible says, is not what's real to me.
Yeah.
And I realize that the translations are horrendous, that these translations were pretty much established hundreds of years ago by men and women that were well-meaning and really wanted to know you, but they were starting from scratch. We understand that maybe what they say was real to them, but when you start looking back at everything that they've said, the Bible is just full of contradictions. They're not, I don't want to say anything against them, but we know that when God says that we're healed and we're not, there's a contradiction there.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's nothing you can do with it. Now you can come up with all sorts of reasons why that's not a contradiction and why the Bible's true. Well, I can tell you, I believe the Bible is true, but not the translations. The translations are people's best effort, their best opinion of what they think was said. But I read in the lexicons, the unabridged lexicons frequently, and I'm always fascinated the arguments that will go on inside of them. And they're not arguments. It's just that the lexicographer. No. Anyway, the people that do the lexicons, they will talk about how different people, different times, the words meant this, then here they meant this, and then this guy thinks it means this, and this guy thinks it means that, and then the designer of the lexicon chooses what they think is best, or they leave them all there. But what did God really say?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, people that don't have the skill of reading these lexicons, they just have to trust what some translator said. Well, all we have to do is go to God and say, who are you? What's real to you? Because what's real to you is reality. And if what's real to you is not real to me, if something else is real to me, then there's a problem here, Father. And I need to know you. I need to know what you think. And because you're my Father, I know that you want to teach me, to train me to think like you, because your thinking is wonderful and it's perfect. And if we all thought like you, this world would be an entirely different place, because you, God, have a different reality than I do. And I want to live in your reality because I was born out of you inside. They talk about the kingdom of God, basileia. But the word also is translated, the lexicons will tell you this, reign, the reign of God. The reign of God is active because God is love. And so I know that if he is love and he is good, then everything is going to reveal that he is love and he is good. Oh boy, when I say that statement, I think, oh yeah, but all of this is revealing that he is good, that he is love. When you finally begin to understand how God thinks, um, I just choose to say, if this is the way you think, then this is the way I'm going to think. And unfortunately, Abba, I've learned a whole lot of stuff that causes me to think differently than you. But I'm just telling you that I choose to learn to think like you. Now, teach me, open my eyes, help me open my eyes, and let us spend time together, you teaching me what you know. See,
Mm-hmm.
I believe God wants us to know everything he knows. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a father knowing things that are of vital importance and saying, I don't want you to ever know that, son. I mean, that is
Right.
stupid.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is stupid. He's a father. We have made God so supernatural. So, and that's a crazy word. I've talked to you about that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
When we apply that to God, that he is supernatural, we automatically consider that other than. God is
Mm-hmm.
supernatural. And so the word changes meaning to be God is other than natural. He's
Mm-hmm.
this massive, but it's not natural. It's supernatural. And it's
Yeah.
like, what how did you make that switch in your mind so that
Right.
now that's comfortable to you?
Right.
No, God is not supernatural like we have changed the definition to be. God is ultimate natural.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to say that super means other than, then we're the ones that are other than natural
Mm-hmm.
because God is very natural. And so we go to God and we say, I was created to be like you, so you are like me because I was created to be like you. But there's some conflicts here, and whatever is causing me to not look like you and not act like you, I want that changed because I want to be just like you, Father.
Yeah.
I am born out of God inside Christ. I'm a member of the body of Christ. And so I that's who I want to be. I want to be who I am inside Christ. And I'm a member of his body and
Yeah.
I am just like him. I want to be just like you, Father. I want to be like you in every way. I want to do the things you do. I
Mm-hmm.
want to think the way you think. I want to have humor and life like you have,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is my life now. I just have been tricked into believing I am other than who I really am. And that's the way every one of us, Father, every one of us on earth has been deceived into believing that we are somebody other than who we really are.
We are believing machines.
Yeah.
And Satan knows that better than
Mm-hmm.
us
Mm-hmm.
and knows how to manipulate.
He has to direct our believing.
Yes. I watched this great video. It was a pickpocket. It was the
Mm-hmm.
world's greatest pickpocket. But he said, all I do is I know what grabs your attention and how to put it where I want it.
Do you think it's possible to control someone's attention? For me, that'd be the perfect superpower. Actually, kind of an evil way of approaching it. When we think of misdirection, we think of something as looking off to the side when actually it's often the things that are right in front of us that are hardest things to see. But attention is what steers your perceptions, is what controls your reality.
And
Yeah.
then you take that and you multiply it by Satan, who is invisible and can get into our heads without us even knowing he's there. Thinking people who think he's there are nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
classic movie.
People that know that they're hearing voices are the ones that are not crazy. It's the people who are sure they're not hearing voices. They're the ones that have the problems.
Yes. I just did a video and I talked about where I would have these conversations with somebody else in my head. And
Okay.
it occurred to me, I'm not having a conversation really with that person. They're not here, but I thought they were. Not consciously, but
Yeah.
I was like, they'll say this. And I thought it was like a true representation of them, when in fact it was an imagination I had of them. And yet they seemed so real when I,
You've literally created a reality, and you know it's your, well, maybe you know it's your own reality. But
right.
yeah, you've created a reality that nobody else can see.
Yeah. I knew they weren't really the person, yet I still thought I was doing something. I
Yeah.
still thought I was affecting my world around me, even though it was all in my head. If we can do that in our minds and make something that seems very real and feels very real to the point where I can be angry at them
Yeah.
when I see them again, even though I never had a conversation with them, I just had it in my head. We think though we're just seeing fact,
Yeah.
but we know that we make it up in our minds.
Yeah.
So why is it so impossible to think that we could possibly do that anywhere else? That what we would see wouldn't be actual, wouldn't be the real reality of what we're seeing.
I believe it is John 16:33,
Okay.
where Jesus says, I conquered the universe. Well, how did he conquer the universe?
Mm-hmm.
How did he do it? And I think that's a reasonable question. He says he conquered it, and if we're like him, then there's things about his behavior, things about what he's accomplished that directly relate to us, because as he is, so are we, which means that we work like Jesus does. However our internal working works, it works the same as Jesus. So, I just looked at that and I realized, I was telling Sandra, Jesus conquered the universe, and how he did it was something very, very simple, and that is by believing the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. He just believed what was real. He believed what God said, and he didn't believe what he was seeing or feeling. He didn't believe that that was reality.
Right.
He knew that it was real to him,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he knew that he was one with God and that there was something going on that was not what people were thinking. And he just believed what God said.
Right.
He treasured what God said. He didn't let anything get between him and what God said. So he didn't let his experience get between him and what God said was the reality.
Right.
What God said was real. We don't even comprehend how to do this, and yet we do it all the time. He's our father, and like any good father, when you're dealing with a child, you don't expect the child to conquer everything and master everything. You teach and you train the child. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what Jesus was going through for the first 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just like my first 30 years, just like your first 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
we were learning, we were growing,
Yeah.
we were developing. And God was training Jesus. He was teaching Jesus. And then there came a point where it was time for him to start using what he had learned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when his mom comes along and says, whatever he tells you, do it.
Right.
So, as a friend of mine said, God was kicking Jesus out of the nest.
And he was a little bit like, no, my time hasn't come. And then he's like, all right, I guess I'll.
Exactly. But if he hadn't believed everything that God said,
Mm.
then what would have happened? He couldn't have learned to be who he was born to be.
Mm-hmm.
To be who he was born to be, he had to believe everything that God told him.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty simple to me. If
That
I
is.
don't believe what I'm told, then whatever I'm told, I'm not going to live
You
because I
won't
don't
be.
believe it.
Yeah, you won't be it.
But
Right.
if I believe what I'm told is true, then that's going to determine how I live. Right? I mean, that's the way we work. Every
Yeah.
human being,
Yeah.
And if
Yes.
people learn a lot of garbage and lies and things like that they don't know are garbage and lies, they're going to live the garbage and lies like they're true,
Yes.
like it's all true, even though it's not. Then they're in a situation where they've learned things that aren't true, combined with some things they probably have learned that are true, which oftentimes collide,
Yeah.
which then create confusion in their minds. That's an explanation of humanity. That's it right there. There's
Yes.
nothing else to it. That's why the world is the way it is, because everybody is living what they believe is true. And when you get two different people both believing different things are true, because our identity gets tangled up in this, when you come to me and you suggest that what I'm believing isn't true because you know it's not true, but I know it's true, what that is an assault on my identity as a person. And there's where all the conflict comes.
Yeah.
And so you get nations that conflict against each other because each one has a identity that's different from the other. And if you're attacking my identity, guess who you're attacking? Me.
Me. Yep.
And I'm going to fight back.
Yeah. And they all believe they're right.
Then they all believe they're right.
They all believe they're the ones that believe what's true.
So we need to find out what's true, what's real. And I've got to find out what's true and real, not even so much with regard to the other person. It's like I'm not finding out what's true and real so that I can defeat the other person, so that I
Yeah.
can conquer the other person.
Right.
Finding out what is true and real because I know that when I am knowing and believing what's true and real, I will live it. So if what I am knowing and believing really is real, it really is true, I'm going to be living the truth.
Yeah.
And there's only one source of truth, God. He's the only one that knows what's true and what's false, what's real and what's not real.
Mm-hmm.
And he lives in reality, which means he lives in what's real. Everything about God and his life is real.
Yeah. And I was thinking that we paint him in our image, kind of.
Yes.
It's the reverse. He's the ultimate natural, and then we're like him, and yet
Because of the things we believe, we're
yeah,
not like who we really are.
we're not like who we really are. And then we like, people shake their fist at God and say he's awful because he's like us and we're awful people,
Yes.
right? We're
Yeah.
not, but we
Yeah,
act.
but the thinking that you're talking about, yes.
Yeah. And so it's the reverse. We're, instead of us being off of his image, which is love, he's off of our image, which is a mess. And we look around and
They
accuse him of being a bad father.
Can
That's
you imagine that you're this rich, wealthy, wonderful person that you know what's right, you know what's wrong, you live what's right always. You can't even make a mistake. It's not possible for you to make a mistake.
mm-hmm,
And so that's who you are. But then you and your wife have a child.
mm-hmm,
And when you have this child, you say, okay, here you are, you're born. You can't even talk to me yet because you don't even know what I'm saying. But I'm telling you, son or daughter, that I am going to put you on an island or a planet, and I'm just going to leave you there. And when I come back, if you have done everything that I told you to do, and that you've learned everything that you're supposed to know, then I'm going to let you come live with me in my wonderful kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, you're on your own. And here's this book. So read
Yeah,
this book. But the
I'll send
problem,
letters.
yeah, we under, I understand that this is going to be badly translated. It's going to have mistakes in it, but in the translations and stuff.
Yeah,
And yeah, you could go back to the original Greek, but you're not going to understand original Greek because
right.
it's going to be 2,000 years
Yeah,
since you learn that. But anyway, you get it all together, and if I think you're acceptable, then I'm going to have you join me in my kingdom.
when you
Well,
die.
when you die, and it's like that. Essentially, is modern Christianity. That
Yeah,
God has dropped you on a planet and
yeah,
He's left you on your own, and He may help you, He may not. It's
yeah.
going to depend on if you say the right things and do all the right things, and
Right.
otherwise you're on your own. And
Yeah,
and it's like, what?
yeah,
Where did we get that theology? But that's modern theology in a nutshell.
yeah. No, that was a perfect illustration. Yeah, and he'll write us a letter, and
Yeah.
it won't really make a lot of sense, and we don't get to write back. We don't get to ask questions. It just is this. You're on a desert island, and you got to fight for your food, and all this stuff.
And all the while, you as the father have abundance, and you
Yeah,
can do
you're
anything you want, and you can
right.
fix anything you want, and you
Yeah,
can do anything, which means you could do anything to help your child on this island.
yeah,
But no, that's not the way you work because
yeah.
you're love, but you're tough love.
Yeah. Yeah,
Ugh.
I was just gonna say that. You could love him. And the modern theology is that he doesn't. That you're all alone. He does, but it's very far away.
Yeah.
It doesn't really do anything. It's just to know and kind of hope that it's true, and yeah, and live, but you got to live like it's true. You got to behave it. You got to, be good to
Got to do
people.
it right, or
Got to
you're
do
on
it
your
right.
own. But you're
Yeah.
on your own anyway.
Yeah, right. But you're still on your own. But you got a few instructions about it, and so yeah, figure it out. We think all these awful things about God, but we do also in our lives all the time experience these things that are good and wonderful and amazing and His truth, and they're very evident. Let's talk about what His reality is for a few minutes. This happened in my life. I got divorced, which
Yes.
and I was not happy about that, and I kind of got angry at God. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I knew He was there. I knew He loved me. I knew He wasn't out to get me or going to do anything that would hurt me. And yet I experienced a divorce. And I was praying one day, and I was just like, I know this good stuff about you, but I don't really like see how this fits. And and I remember him saying to me, "You trusted me with your life, right?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"Yes, I did." It was like a year before I got divorced. I became a believer, and he was like, "Okay, so you did that, and then like a year later you got divorced, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I just didn't understand how I could become a believer and then end up in a divorce. I
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
God, I loved him, I trusted him, and yet this thing that didn't appear to be good happened. And he said, "So you trusted me and you turned all your stuff over to me and you stopped pretending, didn't you?" And I said, yeah, I did. In the difficult things in my marriage, I didn't try to hide and keep the peace and make it go easier or whatever. If there was an argument between me and my wife, I would say, hey, this isn't a true thing that we're arguing about. I know you're not seeing this right. I'm probably not seeing it right. And I don't want us to go down that road. And I was doing that for like a year. And eventually my wife got fed up with it. My ex wife
Yeah.
got fed up with it and said, you're unreachable. You're a total mess and you're never going to not be. And I'm out of here. And she left. And so God said, okay, so you started being honest. You started being confident and secure and loving and hoping good things for your marriage. And then it ended. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, maybe it wasn't supposed to keep going. And you were the one holding it together by hiding and avoiding. And
Yeah.
when you started trying to actually love and to actually connect, that's when your wife took off. And I was like, yeah. And he said, so you could have kept doing that and you might still have a marriage. You might still be married to that lady. If you had kept lying and deceiving yourself
Mhm.
and deceiving her and pretending everything was okay when it wasn't, you might still have a marriage. But would you want to be lying to yourself and others and believing these things? And when she would put you down, just going, yeah, you're right, instead of saying, that's not true about me. That's not who I am. You're not right about that. I'm not these bad things or awful things that you're telling me that I am. You could have kept that. But would you want to at the expense of the truth that you know? Hang on to something. And I was like, no. And he was like, well, then maybe I took care of you. And that's why you're not married now. Because it wasn't going to be safe and it wasn't going to be healthy. It was only going to be a place that could work if it was all kinds of unhealthy and dangerous and bad. But I tell that story as kind of a real world example of it wasn't, I guess you could say I was tricking myself into thinking the divorce was a good thing, but I don't think that I was. I think that I was continuing in the believing of the truth. And there's people who go through divorces and they just, oh, I'm better off without them or whatever. Like, well, are you? Or was this a mess and you shouldn't have gotten a divorce or whatever? But in my situation, and I imagine for other people, sometimes in their situations, it was being taken care of, like really being taken care of and protected. And it might look ugly, but it's kind of like a kid that's going to run out into the street and their dad grabs their arm and it might hurt. But they didn't run out into traffic and get run over by a car, you
Yeah.
know?
Decades ago, I was having so many emotional problems. I had been diagnosed manic depressive.
Mm-hmm.
What's this been 50, 60 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm emotional up and down, up and down. I mean, it was terrible. And I had a terrible business problem that an attorney lied to me and I believed him, and that plunged me into Great Depression. So I ended up, I talked to a psychiatrist. I called this psychiatrist and I just told him that I'd had it. It was it. I'm through. I can't, I just can't overcome all of this. And I'm calling you, but I'm ready to end my life.
Mm-hmm.
he said, okay, I want you to go to this hospital. And I knew it was a psychiatric hospital. And I thought, I don't want to go. It took me several days. And I finally decided, no, I'm in pain enough. maybe this will help me.
Sure.
And I, I admitted myself to this psychiatric hospital, but we had planned on going to a seminar that Friday, which is
Mhm.
several days later. Something good did happen, and I decided I wanted out of that hospital so I could go to the seminar, and
Mhm.
they didn't want to let me out. You
Mhm.
know, they love that insurance money, and but I called my attorney. I said, "Get me out of here,"
Mhm.
and it took 10 seconds for him to get me out. I tell you this just because it was a very emotional, very strenuous time. I mean, I was, ready to blow my brains out, but yet I knew that wasn't the answer, and I didn't want to go to hell, thinking that I would go to hell. So we go to this seminar, and this guy Malcolm Smith talks about the lie, and I had never heard of such a thing. And he pointed to it in Romans 125, where it says that they believed a lie rather than they believed a lie and worshiped the creature rather than the creator.
Mhm.
And he says that's a wrong translation. It doesn't say a lie; it says the lie.
Mhm.
And um, that when he explained what the lie was, I realized I had been believing things that weren't true, but I believed they were true. So I was living like them and feeling like they were true when they weren't true. That I wasn't this terrible person, that I wasn't this and that, and all these terrible things that I always believed about myself and other people. And because of his explanation, I realized none of it's true, and I've been believing it's true.
Mhm.
And then he talked about the unconditional love of God. Well, I'd heard about that forever, but yet nobody had ever explained what the unconditional love of God was, except that it's unconditional as long as you do the right things.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you do the right things, then God's love is unconditional. Like that never made sense to me, but that's where I
Right.
was.
Yeah.
And but then a few weeks later, I got a book talking about telling yourself the truth, and the guy was using biblical principles to say that when you're feeling such and such, then that is because you're thinking this, or this.
Mhm.
And when he said that, I look and I go, oh my God, he's right. I feel this way. And I am thinking that. And that I'm thinking is a lie.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a lie. But now that I know that if I am feeling something or thinking something terrible, um, that he says, God wouldn't think that about you. Well, I wanted to believe God wouldn't think that about me, but it had to be that God was thinking these things about me because I was a terrible person.
Mhm.
I was wrong. So what I think and what I believe, if it's not true, it's going to have a negative effect on my life, and I'm going to be blaming other people or other things or situations
Yourself.
and and myself. He went through in just different Bible verses about that were good things and said, now if you are feeling this, then it means that it's one of these things that you're most likely thinking. And he nailed it over and over and over and over. And so I began to realize, okay, so it's believing the truth, it's thinking the truth, it's telling myself the truth rather than telling myself all this crap that I've been telling myself.
Mhm.
And immediately after reading this book, before I was even through with reading the book, I got through chapter 1 or 2 and I was sold. And
Yeah.
my life begins to change. And the manic depression, the bipolar, it went away. I mean, I had been on medication and everything else, and it was gone.
Yeah.
And I began to realize, okay, so true versus false. I need to learn what is true. And I could look in the Bible and find certain things that I absolutely knew were true. There's other things I could read in the Bible and I would wonder, is this really true? I mean, because if this is true, then why does it say this over here? And so that got confusing to me. But I began to want to know what was true, what
Mhm.
was real. And that was what, 50 years ago, 40 years ago? a long time ago. As this has developed over the decades, I've developed a fellowship with God in which I'm very comfortable with Him. I'm able to tell God, this is who they say you are. This is who I always believed you are. But you know what? I don't like who I believe you are, and I don't like who they say you are. I here's who I want you to be, Father. I want you to love me, accept me, to always be willing to help me, to always want to help me, no matter what the situation is. I here's my image of a perfect father, and that's who I want you to be. And in fact, when I think about it, that has to be who you are.
Right.
You have to be who I want you to be, and not be the person that I was taught you are, that I always believed you are. And so it was a process over years of experimenting, with, well,
Mm.
God, I realize I'm thinking this about you. I don't I don't want to believe you're like that, because if you're like that, I'm finished. I can't survive. And
Yeah.
so I believe you're watching out for me all the time, and that things that I'm experiencing, they're not your plan. They're not your will. They're not what you want. I'm experiencing them, but you didn't cause them. I caused them because of the way that I've been thinking and believing about myself and other people.
Mhm.
And so what I'm trying to explain to you, Lee, is it this wasn't like a revelation that got dumped on me and everything changed. I began to treat God like He's real, and He's a real Father, and He's good, and He's very natural. There's nothing other than natural. I have friends who talk about God being other than natural, and it's like, sorry, that's wrong. You don't yet know what you know, because God is not like that. This is the way He is. And you can see bits of God in wonderful parents, but you never see a parent yet that's totally like God.
Mhm.
But we could learn to be totally like God if we just learned to know what He knows and believe what He believes.
The pop psychologists have made it seem like it's something they invented. They're
Yeah.
taking credit for this idea that your attitude determines your reality. And that's cool, at least it's out there, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that is God's idea, and that is God's method for a lot of stuff. The difference is I think in that pop psychology stuff, it's almost like a pretending. It's like, well, just pretend that it doesn't hurt. Just,
Yeah.
if you are experiencing some awful, awful thing, just, pretend that it's not that big of a deal. Tell yourself, oh, I lost a spouse, I lost a child, I have this diagnosis or whatever. And just tell yourself that it's not that big of a deal. Now, that kind of works. It
Yeah.
does. We know that. We've
Yeah.
seen it. People have made themselves sick. We know people who worry themselves to death or, into a sickness or whatever. And just flipping your mind, even in a very, even with God not in the equation, has its benefits, right? Like if you just don't look at this stuff negatively, then you'll not feel so negative. Like that's a positive trick to
Yeah.
use. But it's not grounded in truth. It's grounded in wishful thinking or hopefulness or something, in fantasy almost. And again, they can overlap, but they're different. They're definitely different. That's why I brought it up. I mean, it sounds like it. It's not it, but it kind of sounds like it. It's not just tricking yourself. It's
Right.
not
Right. Right.
just, you're not just making something up so you feel better. Like, That's the difference between something that's actually true and something you just tell yourself that you kind of hope or whatever, and we are not basing our trust on something that we're like, well, I hope so. We're basing our trust on something we are absolutely seeing and knowing
Mhm.
and accepting as a true thing, not a tactic to fool
Yeah,
ourselves.
this was no tactic. The Dr.
Yeah.
Bacchus, Dr.
No.
Bacchus, he
Yeah.
said, he said, here's what you're feeling. And if you're feeling this, then these are what these are what you're thinking and what
Yeah.
you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
You don't even realize you're telling yourself.
Right.
And I immediately realized, well, I am feeling this, and the truth is, I am telling myself that.
Yeah.
And he told me that I need to argue against that and tell myself the truth. Well, okay, what am I going to base the truth on? He said the truth is in the Bible, and he
Yeah.
would give scriptures of that. Here's true. This is true. This is true. And so I had nothing to lose. I mean, I had just been through terrible, terrible times that I'd wanted to kill myself,
Yeah.
and I thought, what have I got to lose? And
Yeah.
so I looked at what he said the Bible said is true. Well, I believe the Bible, even though I was still confused about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I could read Greek back then, but I didn't understand the Greek I was reading. I'm like all these translators that really don't understand the Greek they're reading and
Yeah.
translating.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it and I said, okay, well, if the Bible says this and Dr. Bacchus says this, and he's already got me hooked because I am feeling this and he has told me why I'm feeling this. And it's true because I am telling myself the things that he says I'm telling myself to get to feel this way. And
Mhm.
so I took the next step and I said, okay, well, God says this about me,
Mhm.
and that has to be the truth because God says it's the truth.
Mhm.
So I just step by step, and I so quickly my emotions, my feelings, my thinking began to change, and so I got really I began to find out that so much that I believed was not true. And a lot of people don't want to find out that what they believe isn't true.
Yeah.
Well, I was desperate.
Yeah.
And so if he had hooked me that, man, maybe what I'm believing is not true, um, and lo and behold, just some little baby steps, and my emotions, my thinking just cleared. And
Yeah.
I thought, wow. And
Yeah.
so I began to think, I've got to know what is true. Well, yeah, okay, the Bible's true, but what in the Bible is true?
Yeah.
How do I know this is true?
Yeah.
And I just went to God. Who are you?
Mhm.
There's two questions I tell people that you need to answer. And if you just answer these two questions, you never have enough question about anything that you will not have an immediate answer for. And
Mhm.
those two questions are, who is God and who are you? And
Mhm.
so I know that the only person that knows the answer to that is God. And so I went to God, and I still ask God sometimes, Father, who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? Tell me who you are, because I don't know and I don't trust anything that anybody else is telling me.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Mhm.
And while you're at it, since I'm made like you, according to your word, who am I? I need to know who I am. It was like God was saying, boy, I've been waiting for somebody to ask me that.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for
Right.
you to ask me that, because now let's explore together. Who am I and who are you?
Mhm.
And I gradually I began to realize what was true and what wasn't true. I began to understand what in the Bible was true and what, if it was questionable to me, I just put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
I didn't just automatically accept everything in the Bible was true. I just forget it. I
Yeah.
just I needed to be taught. I was a child. I'm still a child. I didn't know what I didn't know,
Mhm.
and I didn't know what I knew. I
Mhm.
mean, I was
Yeah.
just a child. And God, he just put his arms around me, and I sat on his lap, and I still sit there. And I learned what is real because God taught me what is real. It
Mhm.
wasn't any person. I learned from people,
Yeah.
but I always had questions when people would say things. They'd say, "Okay, you say this, and that makes sense, but you just said this, and that doesn't make sense," you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite preachers in the world, I was telling my wife that this guy contradicts himself all the time,
Mhm.
and Sandra said, "No, he never contradicts himself." I said, "Oh yeah, he does. Just listen." And a few months later, one day we're listening to him, and she goes, "He just contradicted himself." I said, "Yeah, you heard
Yeah.
it, huh?" She
Yeah.
goes, "Yeah, she just." And ever since then, she can hear the contradictions,
Yeah.
and it doesn't cause her to turn against him. It
Yeah.
just helps clear her own thoughts because she
Right.
realizes, okay, he's
Yeah.
not absolutely true, but he knows more about the love of God than anybody she had ever heard,
Yeah.
and she just continues to grow and learn. And
I wanted to touch maybe on like the I wrote down the flip side because you read telling yourself the truth. And like I was just saying, it sounds kind of pop psychology. It sounds kind of lie to yourself
yeah,
that this is true,
yeah, yeah,
which is awful and nonsense. But that's a lot of what, stuff it tell yourself you're strong even though you feel like you're weak. Okay, well, I guess I'm strong. Oh
yeah.
man, I'm
And
weak.
see,
Oh, I
and
guess I'm
I am
strong.
not saying that, but
Right,
yeah, yeah,
right. But that's how I think a lot of it. That's how I've perceived it over my years of learning psychology and going through. It's this, you know, a popular modality is cognitive behavioral therapy. And what that is it's kind of you tell yourself something, you act like it, and then that's supposed to undo the thing that you were telling yourself and you were thinking. But if you're just kind of picking a thing, if you're like, okay, yeah, I'm unlovable, but I'm going to tell myself that I'm not, and I'm going to kind of act like I'm not. Well, then when somebody doesn't act very loving towards you, that old one's just going to pop right back up.
yeah, yeah,
Like you didn't fix it, you
yeah.
just kind of avoided it, which is, again, not the worst thing in the world. That's, it gives people better lives, it makes them feel happier, and that's wonderful.
Well, here, if I could
Yeah.
interrupt you here, because
Yeah,
this
go
is
ahead.
what you just brought up is really important. We control what we believe by what we submit to, by what we submit to hearing. Remember the word obedience, hupa kuo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and literally, I realized years ago that I can get myself to believe anything I want to is true. I
Right.
can do it. Anybody can do it. In fact, not only can we do it all the time.
We do it all the time.
And we do it by pondering, by listening, by talking to
Pick,
ourselves, talking to
pick,
others, reading,
yep.
watching movies, listening to the news,
The
whatever
news,
you
I was just going to say, pick a Fox News viewer and then a CNN viewer and put them in the same room together and see how much they agree on.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I literally was, and I learned this even though I knew it before. I didn't really know it till after listening to the preacher and then the book telling yourself the truth. I began to realize that I had programmed myself
Yeah.
to believe the things that I believed. And I had done it by either not arguing against stuff
Yeah.
that was not true.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, I didn't argue against it. Well, if you don't argue, if somebody's telling you a lie and you don't argue against it, you will believe it. At some
Yeah.
point in time, you will have swallowed it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
And so I began to realize that I need to start telling myself the things that are true that God says, but if I don't keep telling myself those things, then they won't have the impact on me. I've got to I've got to tell myself these things until I really believe them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people do all the time. They talk to themselves about that. They think about those things. They tell themselves those
Yeah.
things. They listen to other people who say the same things. And even if they have learned something that's really stupid, that in their heart of hearts they know this is dumb, they've told themselves this. They've heard it so many times that literally they now believe, they treasure, they know that is reality, and they reject what's true because for whatever reason they have wrapped their arms around a lie that for some reason they liked it or they didn't like it, but they heard it for so often that, well, I may not like it, but it's got to be true.
Yeah.
And because they've heard it so many times and they've thought about it so often.
Yeah.
And so some of these positive thinking seminars, that's what they do. They teach you to say, that you're good at this, you can do this, do that. And you say it to yourself over and over and over to the point where you believe it and you live
Yeah.
it. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? They're not wrong.
Right.
The problem is that the truths that they're teaching people to believe is not the truth that's going to set them free. It's not the truth that's going to make them the person who they are. It's, they may get rich. I mean, it even works in healing. They can do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what we want is God's reality to be real to us. That's what I want. I mean, that's he's the one that made all of this, and he's the one that made me able to make the things that I make. I mean, I want to know what God knows, and I am going to tell myself what I know God knows until it is part of my thinking. It is part of my being. It's myself. So what you were saying, the way that knowledge is used incorrectly,
Yeah.
but the process is still true. And
Um,
you know this, and I know this, and everybody else knows that. And
yeah.
you can hear people that I mean, I've heard people that they talk about, I'm so stupid, or I'm so fat, or I'm so this, or I'm so that. And the day comes that it wasn't true, but now it is true because they've talked themselves into believing and living a lie.
Yeah. It's true, which is not to say that it is. It's an illusion that they've turned into
A reality,
a
yes.
reality, not a truth, a reality. Again, not to say it's bad, it's you might get rich, you might get in shape, you might get, whatever these things, but it doesn't set you free, which is what we want, that's what everybody's dying for,
Right.
literally. If we could just get people to pull back the curtain on the
Yeah.
wizard, even just to see. Because then what does that mean? What does that mean? That I'm not believing something that's true, right? Like, oh my goodness. Well, then what is? And what is it? What does it do? Does it do something different? Does it help me? Because I need help and I don't have any. So yeah, maybe just what if?
Years ago, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I owned a company and we had a computer room back when they had computer rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a technician that was in the room with me. We were talking about um, the equipment, and somehow the subject came up about believing.
Uh.
And I told him, we believe what we want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that upset him immensely. He said that he believed what he believed because God required him to believe it and God made him believe it. And that's why he believed it. And that was the end of the subject. And I argued with him. I said, no, you believe because that's what you want to believe.
Yeah.
And what for whatever reason that you want to believe it, it's controlling you. And this has been 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and I still remember the conversation that if we're believing whatever we're believing it because we want to. For
Mm-hmm.
some reason, we
Yeah.
want to believe it. We may not like it. Just
Yeah.
because we believe something doesn't mean we like what we believe, but we believe it because for some reason we want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that about myself, it helped me immensely to realize, okay, wait a minute. Some of this stuff I'm believing, it's because I want to believe it. Now, why do I want to believe this?
Mm-hmm.
And that was quite
Right.
an adventure, quite an exploration of why
Yeah.
do I want to believe? Because I believe it, but
Yeah.
maybe it's not true.
Right.
But I want to believe it's true.
Yeah.
Why? Because
Yeah.
it's hurting me. Because
Yeah.
it's troubling me. It's making me anxious. So
Yeah.
why now?
No, that's brilliant. Why would I want to believe that nobody likes me? It's because it's doing something for
Yeah.
you. Everything is. Well, on that cliffhanger, we will um, bid our audience adieu. And yeah, we hope, of course, everybody got stuff from this. We always do. And we invite everybody to please like and subscribe and click the notification bell and leave a comment. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have extra ideas? Whatever it is. And we'd love to get to those and talk about it. And yeah, so like we left you on the cliffhanger, we tune in next time to get all your burning questions answered, or some of them, probably not all because there's too many, but uh, we'll keep going and keep bringing the truth as best as we can, as much as we know. So thanks, and we'll see everybody next time.